Well, Major, I think it reinforced the research that I did on my book that Jeffrey Epstein has always viewed himself as smarter than everybody else, and he also has collected people all along the way, particularly over the 2 decades through his trafficking. And that was always to get secrets and bits of information about individuals that he could pass to other people. He trafficked in this.
The dam has finally broken. After years of whispers, leaked emails, and suspicious tragedies, new Epstein files have dragged the Obama orbit into the same shadowy ecosystem that has already scorched presidents, prime ministers, and Hollywood fixtures. We are not talking about a stray name on a random list. We are talking about patterns of meetings, shared insiders, and carefully worded denials that suddenly read very differently once you line them up against 20,000 pages of congressional records and freshly released emails.
And in the emails, it is quite clear that Jeffrey Epstein had a wide, almost incalculably wide circle of associates, people who were celebrities, people who were either in foreign governments or leaders of foreign governments, business tycoons, and the like.
Right now, in late 2025, the timing is impossible to ignore. On one side, House committees have dumped a trove of more than 20,000 pages of Epstein material, covering everything from 2008 through his final months in 2019. On the other side, the same documents confirm that Epstein stayed wired into power long after his Florida plea deal, maintaining access to sitting presidents, tech billionaires, Ivy League thinkers, and global strategists. In that sea of calendars and correspondence, the Obama name does not appear as often as Trump's or Clinton's, but what we do see is something more subtle, and for some observers, more unsettling. People who served at the very top of the Obama White House moving in and out of Epstein's world, repeatedly, even as accusations around him mounted.
Honey, there have also been more cases filed in court with those accusers attempting to go after potential co-conspirators.
That's exactly right, Whit. 2 more women are suing Epstein's estate. They say they were recruited by an unnamed Epstein employee. Now, this is in addition to the lawsuit filed against Epstein's longtime friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is also accused of recruiting for him.
We start with the connection that is now impossible to brush off as a one-off. Kathryn Ruemler, President Barack Obama's former White House counsel, later a powerful partner at Latham & Watkins, and now a top legal executive at Goldman Sachs. Epstein's detailed calendars, reviewed across roughly 8,000 pages of documents, show dozens of scheduled meetings with Ruemler between 2013 and 2019, including entries in New York, Paris, St. Lucia, and other luxury locations. She has insisted those contacts were purely professional, framed around business referrals and high-end clients, and a Goldman spokesperson has backed that line, stressing that she never flew with him and never met him outside the United States. But then we see calendar notes like a February 2018 reminder that Kathy Ruemler would have a glam squad at her New York apartment at 9 a.m., logged in Epstein's system for reasons that no one has fully explained. When the former chief lawyer to a sitting president shows up more than 50 times in the planner of a registered predator, that alone would raise red flags for congressional investigators. Layered on top of that, the new email dumps expose how Epstein spoke about presidents and their vulnerabilities behind closed doors. In 2019, in a message to journalist Michael Wolff, Epstein insisted that Clinton was never on the island, a line that initially looked like narrow damage control. But when we put it against the House Oversight release from early 2025, we see he used similar language in multiple chains, grouping together names like Bill Clinton, Al Gore, and former Israeli leader Ehud Barak, while trying to draw careful boundaries around what allegedly did or did not happen on his private territory. The Obamas are not directly named in those specific lines, but insiders who have reviewed the wider correspondence argue that this is classic code. Epstein positioning himself as the gatekeeper of secrets about global leaders, deciding which rumors to confirm, which to deny, and which to leave hanging.
Brings it all together with a bow for her, doesn't it? She probably wants to get out early. So I think that we have more digging to do. I think the DOJ transparency effort here is the right thing, but the reason it's on a Friday, Will, is I think there are no smoking guns. There's other places we have to look.
The real tension comes when we shift from what Epstein wrote to what his calendars show. Those records document a 2011 helicopter trip from Richard Branson's island in the British Virgin Islands to the U.S. Virgin Islands with New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, Epstein himself, Richardson's chief of staff Brian Condit, and 3 alleged victims, as later identified by the House Oversight Committee. Richardson, a longtime Democratic heavyweight and a political ally who publicly supported Obama, continued to appear on Epstein's schedules and flight logs through at least 2016. Condit has said they never visited Epstein's private island and doesn't remember who else was on the chopper, but for skeptics, the image is hard to shake. A powerful governor in Epstein's aircraft flanked by young accusers, just 3 years after the financier's 2008 plea deal, while the Democratic Party was preparing for Obama's re-election fight. When we zoom out, we see Epstein moving through a gallery of elite names from 2014 to 2019, Woody Allen and Soon-Yi Previn appearing nearly 100 times on his calendars, Deepak Chopra meeting him repeatedly to discuss meditation and sleep, longevity specialist Peter Attia scheduling blood draws and health consults, media strategist Steve Bannon and Hyatt or Tom Pritzker lining up for dinners and discussions. These are not fringe figures. They are the same crowd that regularly circulates through conference green rooms, Davos panels, and White House receptions. Among them, Ruemler stands out not because she is accused of wrongdoing, but because she held the keys to the legal survival of the Obama presidency during crises like the Benghazi hearings and the healthcare rollout. The question critics now raise is simple. How does someone that close to the center of power end up that close? That often to Jeffrey Epstein years after his conviction.
Next to the new questions around the investigation into the death of Jeffrey Epstein, the accused trafficker stunning the world, taking his own life in a Manhattan jail cell. The official autopsy results just announced by the medical examiner.
Against that backdrop, even the culture war noise around the Obamas starts to look different. Take Joan Rivers in July 2014, joking to a street reporter that President Obama was part of the rainbow community and that Michelle Obama was transgender. At the time, it played like a typical Rivers shock line, another outrageous jab from a comic who famously offended everyone from Costco executives to A-list actors. A month later, on August 28, 2014, Rivers went in for what was described as a routine throat procedure at a Manhattan clinic, suffered catastrophic complications, and never recovered, with her passing on September 4th officially linked to brain damage from lack of oxygen. Federal reviews later found multiple failures at the clinic, ignored vitals, questionable anesthetic dosing, and procedures performed without properly documented consent. Melissa Rivers sued for malpractice. The case settled in 2016, with the clinic accepting responsibility.
Michelle Obama is a man. His words, quote, tranny, and he killed Joan Rivers because Joan Rivers exposed the truth.
On the surface, it is a tragic but familiar Hollywood story. An older star, a botched outpatient procedure, a grieving family, and a quiet legal payout. But as conspiracy-minded corners of the internet saw it, the timeline was too neat. Within weeks of publicly mocking the Obamas' private lives in such blunt terms, Joan Rivers was gone. Alex Jones, never shy about channeling the most extreme currents, flatly accused Barack Obama of being linked to the loss, arguing on his show that Rivers knew too much and had pushed too hard on Michelle Obama's appearance, which he himself obsessively dissected for years. No evidence has ever surfaced to support those claims, and mainstream outlets have treated them as fringe speculation, yet the theory refuses to fade. Each time a new Epstein file drops, social media threads revive that 2014 sidewalk clip, treating it as a kind of foreshadowing of a much larger secret. Recently, that old footage collided with a fresh wave of allegations. In September 2023, Tucker Carlson teased an interview with Larry Sinclair, a convicted con artist who has been claiming since 2008 that he had a substance-fueled encounter with Barack Obama back in 1999, when Obama was an Illinois state senator. In the promo, Sinclair describes meeting a man he says introduced himself as Obama, paying him to obtain white powder, watching him smoke it from a pipe, and then engaging in an intimate encounter. These claims are not new. Sinclair pushed them during the 2008 campaign, failed a lie detector test, and was arrested after one of his press events. He has never produced corroborating evidence, and major news organizations dismissed the story at the time. But Carlson's revival of the interview in the middle of the Epstein document war gave the old narrative new oxygen among audiences already primed to believe that nearly every powerful figure is hiding something.
Okay, so she's upset because it's hard to be so famous, and she's upset because it was very expensive to live in the White House. They had to pay for their own food. Who has to pay for their own food? What kind of world is this? And just as soon as you start working up your sympathy glands for Michelle Obama, you see her just recently out on Steven Spielberg's yacht, cruising around the Mediterranean, while she literally wants you to feel sorry for her.
At the same time, the Obama's public image has been taking hits from a very different angle. Michelle Obama's new podcast, IMO, launched in March 2025, features candid conversations about fertility struggles, IVF, pregnancy loss, marital strain, and the chaos of raising children. In one widely shared episode, she talked frankly about how the early years with daughters Sasha and Malia put serious pressure on her marriage, echoing a 2023 remark that there were 10 years when she couldn't stand Barack during the White House grind. Right-wing host Megyn Kelly seized on those lines, posting a parody video as Megyn O, mocking Michelle's reflections on motherhood and marriage, and later telling viewers that she believed the Obamas married the wrong people. Alongside commentary writer Maureen Callahan, Kelly argued that Michelle's stories painted her husband as a burden rather than a partner, framing the former First Lady as someone unfit to give relationship advice.
That's not the marriage that I am familiar with. That sounds like hell. And that's what Michelle Obama is describing Barack Obama as being. They have nothing to talk about unless they save it until dinner. He smacks his gum and she's like stewing all day like this. I mean, this is real contempt and hatred in a marriage. Like,
yes, it was a couples therapist. First of all, she had on a couples therapist, which is very interesting, her selection of guests, and Barack wasn't there.
Mental health experts have warned that mocking such disclosures can deepen stigma around fertility issues and marital challenges, especially when they involve miscarriage and IVF. Therapists interviewed about the backlash say that when a global figure like Michelle Obama is ridiculed for discussing grief, resentment, and exhaustion, everyday viewers may retreat further into silence about their own struggles. But in the online rumor mill, that nuance is often lost. Instead, Michelle's honesty is recast as proof that the marriage is on the brink, that she resents Barack's ambition, that all the glossy anniversary posts are a front. The fact that she skipped some high-profile moments, such as Donald Trump's inauguration and Jimmy Carter's funeral, while Barack appeared solo, has been fed into that narrative as supposed evidence of private turmoil.
I mean, there's, not to add insult to injury, but there's a Daily Mail report out today saying Kamala Harris's marriage may be on the rocks. Like everybody's on the rocks. Again, I will say I love the Daily Mail, but the sourcing appeared weak. It was like people who know the couple, but like, I don't know if it's any better than that, but they're saying she's blaming him in part for her loss because he turned out to be such a hot mess liability. You buy it?
Into this environment dropped one more bizarre twist. A tabloid story suggesting that Barack Obama was romantically involved with Jennifer Aniston. In October, Aniston addressed the rumor head-on during a late-night appearance with Jimmy Kimmel, holding up a magazine cover and calling the story absolutely untrue, explaining that she had met Obama only once and knew Michelle better than him. Friends say Aniston, who usually ignores wild gossip, chose to speak this time because she knew how much pain infidelity rumors can cause from her own history with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. For her, remaining silent risked feeding a narrative that not only dragged her name, but also piled more pressure on the Obamas' relationship at a time when online chatter was already predicting an imminent split. Despite that, social platforms are flooded with posts declaring that an Obama divorce is inevitable, reading meaning into every separate appearance, every missing wedding ring, every solo vacation photo. Yet earlier this year, for Michelle's 61st birthday, Barack posted a new message calling her the love of my life, sharing a photo of the two holding hands over dinner and praising her warmth, humor, and grace. Michelle reposted the image with a simple, "Love you, honey," a quiet counter to the storm of speculation. For many viewers, this looked like normal long-term marriage dynamics playing out under a spotlight. For others already suspicious because of Epstein, Sinclair, and Rivers, it looked like calculated optics, a PR move to steady a brand.
She is not sorry.
They are looking forward. All the women in your life are looking forward.
All the women in my life are looking forward to being able to live a more normal life.
Yeah, but still not entirely normal. Obviously, everybody's under the microscope at all times. A little bit more. And you're staying in Washington, D.C., which is unusual for an exiting president.
And that is where all these threads start to tangle. The official records of Epstein's networking with an Obama insider like Kathryn Ruemler, the long-running fringe claims about Barack's private life, the resurfaced footage of Joan Rivers mocking the Obamas weeks before her clinic tragedy, the revival of Larry Sinclair's story by a high-profile interviewer, the culture war pile-on around Michelle's raw podcast confessions, the surreal Jennifer Aniston rumor that even she felt compelled to swat down. None of these elements on their own proves a hidden pact between the Obamas and Jeffrey Epstein. But as more emails, calendars, and sealed files head toward public release under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the real question is shifting from whether the Obamas appear in the documents to what, exactly. People in their immediate orbit knew about Epstein's habits and what, if anything, was being quietly traded in those meetings that kept happening long after the world was supposed to have turned its back on him. Let's talk about Kathryn Ruemler. We are looking at the former gatekeeper of the Obama White House, the lawyer who sat in the Situation Room and shaped their legal strategy, suddenly reappearing not in court filings or law reviews, but in Jeffrey Epstein's appointment logs. We see more than 50 scheduled meetings over several years, entries dotted across New York, Paris, and tropical getaways. And then, that strange 2018 note about a glam squad coming to her apartment at 9 in the morning. The public line is that it was all professional, all about business referrals and high net worth introductions. But we have to ask, since when does a man with a conviction for predatory behavior start tracking a former White House counsel's beauty schedule in his own calendar unless appearances and access were part of the same conversation? When we follow the money trail, the pattern sharpens. By the time these meetings ramp up, Ruemler has moved from government service into the rarefied world of mega-firm partnerships and, later, a senior seat at one of the most powerful banks on the planet. Epstein, for his part, is obsessed with influence. He's emailing journalists whole manuscripts, hosting think tank stars, dangling investments and introductions. A figure like Ruemler sits at the intersection of politics, finance, and legal shield building. If Epstein could claim proximity to her, he had a calling card in both Washington and Wall Street. And if she could tap his Rolodex of billionaires, tech founders, and foreign power brokers, everyone at those tables knew the value of looking the other way about his past. That is where the Trump-Epstein-Obama triangle becomes less of a meme and more of a strategic map.
And we can tell you the top line here is that there's no client list, according to Ghislaine Maxwell, and there are no high-powered individuals that were on any sort of list. She did not incriminate anybody in that 9-hour interview that she did with the Deputy Attorney General.
In private emails, Epstein calls Donald Trump borderline insane and refers to him as that dog that hasn't barked, implying he knows things that have not yet exploded in public. At the same time, House releases show redacted chunks and chains, where Epstein is cataloging what various presidents and would-be presidents allegedly knew about his social scene. Some observers point to those blacked-out lines and argue that the focus on Trump is almost too convenient. If the spotlight is blinding on one figure, who fades into the shadows? The Obamas rarely appear by name in those specific files, but their former insiders do, and that is where people start to suspect that the real story is not one party versus another, but the same fixer trying to keep both sides on a hook. We have seen this tactic before in other scandals. Play both teams, hold compromising stories on everyone, and survive by making yourself too dangerous to expose. With Trump, Epstein boasts in one email that he knows how dirty Donald is, framing himself as someone who could, in theory, take a sitting president down. With another circle, he emphasizes that Clinton was never on the island, as if pre-clearing one powerful figure while remaining very vague about the rest. If he was doing that much narrative management around two presidents already, how valuable would a quiet understanding with the Obama's legal brain trust have been? We're not handed a neat confession in the documents, but the architecture of mutual leverage is written between the lines. Then we move into the Hollywood and narrative control zone.
Do anything wrong, they're suddenly going to be in the spotlight. And that's just a kind of a strange scenario that we're finding ourselves in. As to why they released it, I mean, look, the grand jury materials, I think, were kind of properly protected by a judge who said, no, it's not enough just that the world's really excited and wants to know kind of scurrilous details about Epstein and Maxwell. The judge, I think, properly respected the statutory protection.
On the surface, filmmaker Woody Allen insists that his encounters with Epstein were only social, that his wife was always present, that there was nothing more than dinners and screenings. The calendars, though, stack up almost 100 planned meetings between 2014 and 2019, including shared flights with names that match known accusers and trips to New Mexico and Florida. Whether or not every one of those plans happened exactly as written, the intent is clear. Epstein wanted a close, ongoing link to a director whose work and public persona shaped how millions understood taboo topics, power imbalances, and reputation itself. Now fold Ruemler back into that same frame. We see appointments marking dinners where Woody Allen, his wife, Epstein, and the former Obama counsel are all slated to share a table. Another note references a gathering that would have put her and Trump strategist Steve Bannon in the same room, again under Epstein's umbrella. This is not just a social diary, it is a casting sheet for who controls stories. Add in the repeated meetings with Deepak Chopra, a wellness star who can change how people talk about mental states and personal transformation, and author Michael Wolff, who has built a career turning political gossip into best-selling narratives about presidents. One cluster of people can soften an image, another can sharpen it into scandal, and Epstein is sitting in the middle shuffling the deck.
I want to know how Epstein made the money that he did. I want to know what the transactions are he was involved in. And that should all be something that the Treasury Department, the FBI can get access to, because in the meantime, what we're left with is Ghislaine Maxwell effectively downplaying this whole thing. Yeah, he was a pedophile. He hid it from everybody. Nobody else was involved. There's no proof of anything else. There's no blackmail. There's no foreign intelligence tie.
Even his health-focused relationships fit the pattern. The longevity doctor who schedules blood draws and follow-ups with him, the meditation sessions meant to calm his mind, the introductions to high-end labs and university research centers. All of that helps launder his profile. When a man under a cloud surrounds himself with spiritual advisors, cutting-edge scientists, and award-winning artists, he is not just passing time, he is building exhibits for a future defense. For an administration like Obama's, which prided itself on cerebral cool and moral poise, having key alumni show up in that same orbit blurs the line between respectable and radioactive. And then, back in the pop culture trenches, Joan Rivers starts to look less like a one-off provocateur and more like the canary in the coal mine.
How do you feel about Michelle Obama's hair?
I think she looks great.
You like the bangs?
I like the bangs, and it's going to save him a fortune on Botox. He shows them to the forehead now, just around here.
When she threw out that now infamous sidewalk remark about Barack Obama's private life and Michelle's identity, it sounded like typical Joan. Cruel, sharp, outrageous. What many viewers did not realize is that those lines echoed niche rumors already circulating in the darker corners of political forums and late-night radio. The same corners that also obsessed over rumor boards about secret islands, sealed files, and private agreements between elites. Within weeks, Rivers goes in for a routine procedure and never comes back out. Official reviews blame sloppy protocol and bad decisions in the operating room, and her family settles with the clinic. Yet, for conspiracy watchers, the timing, the target, and the finality turned her into a martyr of loose talk. We have to note that no court has tied the Obamas to Epstein's worst acts, and no filing has proved that Joan Rivers was punished for jokes. But in the gossip economy, what matters is how the puzzle looks from a distance. On one side, an ex-president and first lady selling a story of stable love, hard-won success, and moral clarity. On the other, a growing pile of documents showing how close some of their trusted allies stood to a man whose entire life was built on exploiting access, favors, and silence. When we add in the resurfaced interviews with fringe accusers, the late-night rumors about secret partners, and even Jennifer Aniston having to deny an imaginary romance with Barack Obama, it starts to feel less like random chatter and more like a sustained fog around a very specific brand.
Some breaking news right now. Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was facing trafficking charges.
So where does that leave us? The Obamas have spent years as symbols of integrity and aspirational family life. But the Epstein files, the calendars, the emails, and the strange pattern of who ends up in his orbit force us to ask whether that image is complete or carefully curated. Were these just unfortunate overlaps in elite circles, or were powerful people quietly coordinating narratives while critics like Joan Rivers became cautionary tales? As more pages leak and more names surface, we are left with one haunting question. What did they really know, and how far would they go to keep us from ever seeing the full picture? Let us know what you think in the comments, because this story is far from over, and the next revelation could change everything we thought we knew about the most protected couple in modern politics. For now, we are signing off. Stay curious, stay sharp, and we will see you in the next deep dive.